Some things on the internet are not meant to be found. They lurk in the shadows, waiting.
I've been staring at this script for 3 days, and I still don't know how to start it. That's not something I usually admit. You come here for stories, I tell them, we move on. But these specific three, have been sitting in a folder on my desktop for weeks. Opened and closed, written and deleted. Because there's a version of me that genuinely considered never posting this at all. You've heard about dream vacations. This isn't that. Most people come back from vacation with sunburns and souvenirs. Maybe a few hundred photos they'll never actually sort through. A magnet for the fridge. Some people, though, they come back different. Quieter, like something followed them home and took up residence just behind their eyes. And a few don't come back the same way they left at all. I mean that in more ways than one. These are real accounts. Submitted, verified as best as I can verify anything, and sitting in my archive for longer than I'm comfortable admitting. 3 stories, 3 vacations, 3 moments where something that should have been ordinary became anything but. The first 2 kept me up late. The third one kept me up for 4 nights straight. I debated whether to include it at all. I'm still not sure I should have, but I think you need to hear it. And I think, somewhere in the back of your mind, you already know that something like this was always possible. Let's start with story 1. Because it begins exactly the way every good vacation does, with a road trip, a cheap motel, and absolutely no reason to be afraid. Yet, Marcus and Delia were 8 hours into a 12-hour drive when they decided they were done. Not done with each other. They'd been together 6 years. They were past that. Done with the road. Done with the dark stretch of Route 9 that had been offering them nothing but tree line and the occasional dead possum for the last 2 hours. Delia had been running the playlist. Marcus had been complaining about it. They'd stopped for gas somewhere in the middle of nowhere, bought 2 bags of chips they didn't need, argued cheerfully about whether the beef jerky was worth the $4 price difference. It wasn't, and got back in the car feeling like the best version of themselves. That specific kind of happy that only exists on road trips, somewhere between tired and wired, when everything feels like a joke you're both already in on. The sign for the motel appeared out of the dark like it had been waiting for them. Restwell Inn. Vacancy. Color TV. Color TV, Delia said. We've made it. Marcus pulled in without much deliberation. $47 a night. A parking lot with 4 other cars in it. A vending machine near the ice dispenser that buzzed with the low, persistent hum of something that had been slightly broken for years and would be slightly broken forever. The carpet in their room was the specific shade of brown designed to hide every possible kind of stain. It smelled like industrial cleaner, and underneath that, something older. The door lock took 2 tries to catch. The wall between their room and room 9 next door was thin enough that they could hear, or imagine they could hear, the specific quality of silence on the other side. Not the silence of an empty room. A different kind. But it was fine. It was all fine. They laughed about the carpet. Took a photo of the color TV. Delia found a takeout menu from 2013 in the nightstand and said it was vintage. Marcus fell asleep in under 4 minutes. They were tired, they were warm, and the door was locked. They should have kept driving, but they didn't. And what happened that night is something Marcus still can't fully explain even to the police. Marcus woke up at 12:40 a.m. and didn't know why. That's always how it starts, isn't it? No alarm, no bad dream, just eyes open, staring at a ceiling you don't recognize, with the immediate, animal certainty that something is wrong. He lay still for a moment and listened. Delia was asleep beside him. The vending machine was still buzzing down the hall. And from the other side of the wall, from room 9, the room that had been so perfectly silent when they arrived, There was movement. Dragging. That's the only word for it. Something slow and heavy being moved across a floor. He told himself it was a TV. Late-night movie. Someone rearranging furniture because people do weird things at midnight in motels. That's just life. He rolled over, closed his eyes. The dragging stopped. Then a voice. Low, almost below the register of actual words. Not quite a murmur. More like someone speaking very deliberately into a wall, directly into the drywall, directly at him. He couldn't make out language, but the rhythm was wrong. Too slow, too evenly spaced, like something reciting. He got up and checked the door. Locked. Chain on. He stood there in the dark for a long moment, listening, and then the sound stopped entirely, and he went back to bed and convinced himself, with the particular determination of someone who desperately wants to be convinced, that it was nothing. At 2:17 a.m., someone knocked on their door. Marcus opened it. The hallway was empty in both directions. The fluorescent light at the far end was flickering in that slow, rhythmic way that felt almost deliberate. He stood in the doorway for 10 seconds. 20. Nothing. He closed the door, relatched the chain, and stood with his back against it. That's when he heard it. His name. Through the wall. Not shouted. Not called. Spoken in a conversational tone. The way you'd say someone's name to get their attention across a quiet room. Marcus. He said later that the worst part wasn't the sound itself. It was how certain he was that he'd heard it. No room for doubt. No chance it was a TV or a dream. Someone in room 9 said his name at 2 a.m. in a motel where he'd paid cash and signed in under nothing. He called the front desk. The clerk picked up on the first ring, which, if you've ever called a motel front desk at 2 a.m., you know is its own small wrongness. Is there a guest checked into room 9? Marcus asked. A pause. Then, room 9 is unoccupied, sir. Are you sure? Because I can hear. Room 9 has been unoccupied for some time. That's specific phrasing. For some time. Not, it's empty or nobody's in there. For some time. Marcus said the clerk's voice was completely flat. Rehearsed. Like he'd answered this exact question before. I'm going to pause here, because the next part is where it gets genuinely hard to explain. Marcus woke Delia. They looked up the motel registry on the office window in the morning light, at 5 a.m., before anyone was at the desk. Room 9 had a last check-in date. 8 months ago. What they found in that room's logbook, the physical logbook the clerk had left open on the desk, is the part the motel owner begged them not to share online. So I won't. But I'll tell you this. There were 12 entries over 14 months. Different names, different dates, and every single entry had the same note written in the margin, in the same handwriting, in ink that looked newer than the date suggested. Heard it too. They left before sunrise. Didn't check out. Just drove. And Marcus says that to this day. If you search that motel's address Route 9 the Restwell and it doesn't come up. Like it was never there. Marcus and Delia made it home. They're fine or fine adjacent, which I think is the best any of us can hope for after something like that. They filed a report with the local non-emergency line 3 days later. An officer drove out, took a look, and called back to say the room appeared undisturbed. No signs of forced entry or occupancy. Nothing actionable. Nobody ever explained the name through the wall. Marcus stopped expecting them to. He did go back once, just drove past, didn't stop, about 4 months later. The Restwell Inn was still there. Still open. Same buzzing vending machine, presumably. He said the vacancy sign was on. He didn't pull in. Here's what I find genuinely funny in the most exhausting way possible. The motel still has a 3.2 on Google Maps. 47 reviews. Complaints about the Wi-Fi mostly. Someone gave it 5 stars and said, quote, surprisingly quiet. Not one review mentions room 9. Not one. I've read all 47. I need you to understand that I did that so you don't have to. Drop a comment if you've ever stayed somewhere that just felt wrong. Not haunted movie wrong. Not flickering lights wrong, just fundamentally, quietly, inexplicably wrong in a way you couldn't justify to anyone else. You'll know the feeling when I describe it. Some of you already know exactly what I mean. Story 2 is different. Story 2 happened on a beach, in broad daylight, and somehow that makes it worse. Because at least in a dark motel hallway, you expect to be scared. Nobody expects what happened to Renata at a 5-star resort in Cancun. Renata saved for 14 months for that trip. She and her 2 closest friends, Priya and Jade, had booked 7 nights at an all-inclusive resort on the Cancun hotel strip. The kind of place that has 4 pools and a lazy river and a breakfast buffet that genuinely makes you reconsider every life choice that led you to eating cereal over a sink on a Tuesday morning. The reviews were immaculate. The photos looked almost digitally enhanced, except they weren't. The water really was that color. The sand really was that fine. The swim-up bar really did exist and really did serve something called a paradise drift that cost nothing, because everything cost nothing, because that's the deal, and the deal felt, for the first 2 days, like the best thing that had ever happened to any of them. The staff were exceptional, attentive without hovering, smiling without exception. That last part sounds like a compliment. It didn't stay that way. By the end of day 1, Renata had been greeted with the phrase, "Is everything to your satisfaction?" 11 times. She counted, not because she was suspicious, just because she was the kind of person who noticed patterns. The phrase was identical every time. Same cadence, same warm, practiced tilt of the head. Different staff members, same words, same smile that reached exactly as far as it needed to and no further. Day 2, she saw the same pool attendant, a young man with a name tag that read Emilio, at the North Pool at 11 a.m., and then again at the South Pool at 11:15. The South Pool was a 7-minute walk away. She mentioned it to Priya, who told her she needed another paradise drift and was probably right. Day 2, a dinner guest at the table beside them struck up a conversation. Warm, funny, traveling alone. They spoke for 40 minutes. The next morning, Renata mentioned her to the concierge, trying to track down her name. The concierge smiled and said they had no record of a solo guest matching that description. By day 3, Renata had started keeping a list. The list started as a joke. By the end of the week, it had 17 entries, and the last one read, "I think they know I've been watching. P." The list started with small things. Emilio in 2 places. The repeated phrase, the vanishing dinner guest. Renata told herself it was confirmation bias, that she was pattern matching because she'd started looking for patterns, which is the kind of rational explanation that works perfectly until it doesn't. Day 4, she followed someone. She wasn't proud of it. A staff member she didn't recognize. No name tag. Dark uniform slightly different from the others. Walked past the pool bar at 11 p.m. and disappeared through a door beside the towel station that Renata had never seen open before. She told Priya she was going to get water. She followed him. The door opened into a service corridor that wasn't on any map she'd seen of the resort. She'd studied the map. She was that kind of traveler, the kind who likes to know exits. This corridor wasn't on it. Concrete floors, fluorescent lighting, the specific chill of a space that's air-conditioned not for comfort but for equipment. She followed it maybe 30 feet before the staff member turned a corner and was gone, and she stopped walking because there were doors on either side of her, and one of them was open. She looked in. Monitors. A bank of them, covering 3 walls. Feeds from cameras, pool areas, restaurants, lobby, corridors. Standard enough for a large resort. Except that some of the feeds weren't common areas. Some of them were closer, tighter. The framing was wrong for security cameras. And on the desk beneath them, in neat labeled folders, was paperwork she only had 3 seconds to process before she heard footsteps and backed out of the room and walked very calmly back down the corridor and through the towel station door and ordered a drink she didn't touch. I've stayed at all-inclusives. I'm never staying at one again. She didn't tell Priya or Jade what she'd seen. Not yet. She needed to think. She went to bed and didn't sleep, and at 7 a.m. the next morning, at the breakfast buffet, a man sat down across from her uninvited. He was maybe 60, American, sunburned in the way of someone who'd been there long enough. He said his name was Don. He said, quietly and without preamble, "You went through the towel door last night." Renata said nothing. "I'm not going to tell anyone," Don said. "I'm telling you to stop. Whatever you're doing, whatever you think you're figuring out, stop. Check out early if you can. Don't ask questions at the front desk. Don't mention what you saw to the staff." She asked him what he'd seen. He looked at her for a long moment. "There's a key card," he said. "Gray. No logo. If you find one, don't use it. And don't let them know you found it." He stood up. "I've been to 4 resorts in the last 2 years. 3 of them were like this. I don't think it's one company. I think it's..." He stopped, smiled at something over her shoulder, finished his coffee, left. By dinner, Don was gone. "Checked out," the front desk said. "Family emergency." That night, Renata found a gray key card tucked beneath the base of the lamp on her nightstand. No logo, no room number. She didn't use it. She photographed it and put it in her bag and sat on the edge of the bed and looked around her room, really looked, and found the camera in 11 minutes. Inside the smoke detector, angled at the bed. What was on that key card is the part Renata refuses to describe in detail. She said it would ruin resorts for anyone who heard it. I believe her. I'm not pushing. What I'll tell you is that the folders she'd seen in that monitoring room, the labeled folders on the desk, had guest names on them. Not room numbers. Names. And the folder on top had been open. It had Renata's name on it. Renata checked out 2 days early. Told the front desk it was a family emergency. The manager smiled and said, and I'm quoting directly here, "We hope to see you again soon." Like they already knew they would. Renata reported it. Of course she did. She filed a complaint with the resort's parent company, contacted the Mexican Tourism Board, and spent 40 minutes on the phone with someone at the Federal Trade Commission who was polite and thorough and ultimately useless. The camera in the smoke detector, she was told, could have been installed by a previous guest. The monitoring room she'd described couldn't be located during the resort's internal review. Don couldn't be traced. No guest by that name. No matching checkout record. The gray key card disappeared from her bag somewhere between the resort and the airport. She has no explanation for that. For months after the trip, Priya was going through vacation photos and called Renata to ask about something in the background of a poolside picture. A man in a dark uniform, no name tag, standing at the edge of the frame, looking directly at the camera. Renata said she recognized him immediately as the staff member she'd followed through the towel door. The photo was taken on day 1, before she'd started the list, before she'd seen anything. The resort currently holds 4.5 stars on 2 major travel platforms. Top review reads, "Great pool, friendly staff, would definitely return." I genuinely don't know how to feel about that last part. Notice anything familiar about the way the staff behaved? The rehearsed responses, the seamless deflection, the sense of being watched without being able to prove it? I did. It rhymes with something in story 1 in a way I keep coming back to. If anyone stayed at an all-inclusive and noticed something off, the wrong kind of attentive, the smile that doesn't quite land, you know where the comment section is. Story 3 is the one I almost didn't. There were 6 of them. Celeste, who had found the listing and would spend the entire weekend being either vindicated or blamed for that, depending on the hour. Theo, who didn't believe in anything and said so frequently. Amara, who believed in everything and matched Theo's frequency exactly. Dom and Reese, a couple who'd been together long enough to communicate entirely in half sentences. And Jess, who got a bad feeling in the car about 40 minutes out and said nothing because she didn't want to be that person. She wishes she'd been that person. The cabin was gorgeous in the way that makes you feel like you've earned something. 3 hours outside the city, end of an unpaved road, surrounded by the kind of tree density that swallows sound. Wraparound porch, wood-burning fireplace, a kitchen stocked with cast iron pans and a corkscrew and nothing else, because that's the deal with cabins, and everyone had packed accordingly. Celeste had found it on a rental platform, a listing with professional photos, a detailed description, and exactly 3 reviews before they apparently stopped appearing. She'd assumed the host was new. She didn't think about it again until later. The first thing Jess noticed was the smell. Faint, irregular, there and gone. Something organic and slightly wrong beneath the wood smoke and pine. She mentioned it once. Theo said it was probably the septic system. The dog, Dom and Reese's 3-year-old retriever, an animal of boundless enthusiasm and zero self-preservation instinct, refused to go near the northeast corner of the property from the moment they arrived. Wouldn't be coaxed, wouldn't be bribed, just stood at a fixed distance and watched that corner of the tree line with his ears flat and his tail completely still. They brought their bags in, opened the wine, discovered the fireplace worked perfectly. Theo found a Bluetooth speaker and the volume debate began immediately, and everything was exactly what a cabin weekend was supposed to be, right up until Celeste opened the door off the hallway, the one they'd assumed was a closet, and stopped. There was a lock on the door. Heavy, exterior-grade deadbolt, mounted on the inside. She called the others over. They stood there looking at it. The lock faced inward, not positioned to keep something out, positioned to keep something in. They laughed it off, joked about it, posted about it, and then night fell. They went to bed around 1 a.m. Campfire burned down, wine finished, Theo having delivered a 20-minute monologue about how the locked door was a liability thing, probably required by the rental platform's insurance policy, genuinely not interesting. Amara had countered that it was extremely interesting, and also what was that smell, and also the dog still wouldn't go near the corner. Theo said goodnight. The group dispersed to their rooms in the specific way of people who are tired enough to stop arguing. 1:47 a.m. Footsteps on the roof. Celeste heard them first. She lay still and listened and told herself it was an animal, a raccoon, a possum, something with 4 legs and no significance. The footsteps were slow, evenly spaced. They moved from one end of the roof to the other and stopped above her room and did not continue. She stared at the ceiling for 11 minutes. The footsteps didn't resume. She did not sleep again. 2:20 a.m. A sound from behind the locked door. Not loud, not dramatic, just a single, low sound, somewhere between a scrape and a knock. That came once and didn't repeat. Dom heard it from the hallway bathroom. He stood in the dark for a moment, looked at the door, looked at the lock, confirmed the lock was engaged, and went back to bed and woke Reese and told her, and Reese said, "Don't," in the tone that meant don't think about it, don't talk about it, don't make it real by giving it attention. He didn't sleep either. 3:10 a.m. Jess was found on the porch. Amara had gotten up for water and found the front door standing open and Jess outside, standing at the porch railing, barefoot on the cold wood, staring into the tree line. Amara said her name twice before she responded. Jess turned around with the specific confusion of someone pulled out of a depth that wasn't quite sleep. She had no memory of walking outside, no memory of opening the door. She was cold in the way of someone who'd been standing there long enough for it to matter. This is the part of the story where, every single time, I wish someone had just left. Theo, woken up and briefed on the situation at 3:15 a.m., delivered his assessment. Sleepwalking, stress response, mildly concerning but not supernatural. Everyone should go back to bed. Amara looked at him with an expression that could have meant several things. Jess sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket and said very quietly that she didn't think she'd been sleepwalking, that she remembered something at the edges, a sound that had pulled her outside, something that had felt, in the dream logic of it, like her name being called. Theo went back to bed. The remaining four stayed up. At 3:40 a.m., Dom took the flashlight and walked the perimeter because he needed to do something with his hands and his nervous system. He made it to the northeast corner of the property, the corner the dog wouldn't approach, and stopped. What he photographed, there is something I'm not going to describe in detail. I'll just say this: it had been there for a while, and it was arranged, deliberately, carefully, with a patience that implied time and intent, and someone who knew exactly where the edge of the property was. They weren't alone. They hadn't been alone since they arrived. They didn't leave because it was late, because they'd been drinking, because humans are uniquely terrible at recognizing when they should run. Day 2 was worse. Nobody slept after 3 a.m. They sat in the living room and watched the windows lighten and didn't talk much, and when the sun was fully up, Theo said they should open the door. Not a joke this time. No monologue about insurance policies. He said it flatly, in the voice of someone who has been revising their position in the dark for several hours and has arrived somewhere uncomfortable. Celeste found a screwdriver in the kitchen drawer. It took 4 minutes to remove the exterior plate. The deadbolt slid back. The door swung inward. The smell hit them first. Stronger here. Concentrated. That organic wrongness that Jess had noticed on arrival. The one Theo had attributed to the septic system. It wasn't the septic system. The room was small. No window. A bare bulb overhead that, impossibly, worked when Celeste hit the switch. And in that light they stood in the doorway and looked at what the room contained, and nobody said anything for a long time. A mattress on the floor. Thin, old, with a sleeping bag on top that had been used recently. Recently enough that the impression of a body was still visible in it. A camping lantern. A stack of canned food with a manual opener sitting on top. Water jugs, 6 of them, most still full. Someone had been living in this room. The walls were covered in writing. Not frantic, not chaotic. Careful, small, precise handwriting in black marker, covering every available surface from floor to ceiling. Observations, mostly. Times and dates going back 14 months. Weather notes, animal behavior, and interspersed throughout, in the same careful hand, descriptions that took a moment to process. Descriptions of previous renters. Physical descriptions. Routines. Sleep schedules. Who got up first? Who stayed up latest? Which rooms they slept in. Written with the patience of someone who had done this many times and intended to keep doing it. I need a second. I've read this account 4 times and it still does something to me. Celeste found her name on the wall in under a minute. Not because it was prominent, because she was looking, and it was there, in a section near the door, at eye level, written above 5 other names. 6 names total. Celeste, Theo, Amara, Dom, Reese, Jess. That's all I'm going to say about that. There were 6 names on the wall. The group had 6 people. The names were correct, spelled correctly, in full. Theo called the rental host. Disconnected number. Celeste pulled up the listing on the platform. It was gone. Not deactivated. Removed entirely, along with the host account, sometime in the last 12 hours. Dom searched the host's username. It had been used on 3 other rental platforms, all now deleted, spanning 4 years and 11 properties across 7 states. Reese found the photographs last. A shoebox under the mattress. Printed photos, not digital, printed, of people inside the cabin. Taken through windows. Previous renters who had no idea. Dozens of them. Sorted and labeled with the same precise handwriting. The most recent set was on top. They were of Celeste's group. Taken the previous night. The one on top was of Jess, standing at the porch railing at 3 a.m., staring into the tree line. Taken from outside, from the direction of the northeast corner of the property, from wherever Dom had found the arrangement in the dark. They got out, all 6 of them. But what they found when they reported it, or rather, what they didn't find is the part that's never left me. They drove 3 hours to the nearest police station because none of them wanted to wait for someone to come to the cabin. Didn't want to stand in that driveway 1 minute longer than they had to. Celeste took photos of the wall before they left. Dom took the shoebox. Jess sat in the back seat the entire drive with her knees pulled up and didn't speak, and nobody asked her to. The detective who took their statement was thorough and kind and completely unable to help them. The rental listing was gone, confirmed. The host account untraceable, confirmed. The room showed clear signs of habitation, but nothing the law could easily classify. No evidence of forced entry, because whoever it was had a key or had never needed one. The photographs were taken from outside the cabin on private rental property, which existed in a legal gray area that the detective explained with the specific weariness of someone who had navigated gray areas too many times. The names on the wall were disturbing but not, technically, a threat. There's no evidence of a crime, he said. Not dismissively, almost apologetically, like he understood exactly how insufficient that was. The shoebox went into evidence. They never heard anything further about it. Amara moved cities 4 months later. Said it wasn't related. Jess stopped traveling entirely. Not a fear response, she told people, just a preference change. Theo, who had spent the entire weekend not believing in anything, does not talk about the trip. At all. To anyone. Celeste still checks rental platforms sometimes. Here's the question I keep coming back to. All 3 of these stories involve people who went somewhere to escape. That's what vacations are, at the core. A temporary exit from your actual life. A motel off a dark highway. A resort where everything is handled for you. A cabin in the woods where your phone barely works and nobody can reach you. Places designed, in their different ways, to make you feel like you've left something behind. But here's what I noticed only after I'd laid all 3 accounts side by side. Something I missed the first time through, and the second, and only caught on the 3rd read when I was looking at the geography. The motel on Route 9. The resort in Cancun. The cabin. I'm not going to tell you what connects them. Not yet. I need to verify one more thing before I say it out loud. But I'll tell you that when I saw it, I sat back from my desk and didn't touch the script for 2 days. If any of these stories sound familiar, if you've stayed somewhere that felt wrong in ways you couldn't explain to anyone after, I want to hear about it. The comment section is there. I read everything. There's a 4th story. I'm not ready to share it yet. But when I am, you'll want to be here for it. Vacations are supposed to be escapes. I've started to wonder, escape from what? Or escape to what?